Base stats might be the most important thing for determining how a Pokemon performs in battle. Typings, abilities, and moveset play a part, but it's a Pokemon's base stats that define them more than anything. Is it a glass cannon? Is it more of a tank? Or is it just hot garbage? Regardless of how good or bad they are in battle, most Pokemon stats make sense considering their design. Scyther is a flying bug with giant scythes, so naturally it's speedy and attack-oriented. Steelix is a giant metal snake, and as such, it has a huge defense stat. These are just two of many Pokemon whose stats line up well with their designs. But that being said, quite a few have base stats that just seem off. For some, it's a stat being wildly out of proportion, like Purugly being faster than a jet. For others, it's a stat being underwhelming, like a giant rock snake being weaker than a cricket. And some just don't make any sense. Today we'll go through some Pokemon stat spreads and try to figure out what the hell Game Freak was smoking when they made them. This won't be a list of Pokemon with terrible stats in general, nor will it be a critique of any gimmicky stats, like Shuckles, Shedinjas, or Chanseys. Instead, we'll be seeing where some Pokemon stat spreads went wrong, and even see if we can fix them. Not every Pokemon needs to be a top-tier threat, but at the very least, these Pokemon could use a buff or two to make them better, or even just make more sense. Make your guesses on who I'll be talking about, and subscribe for more Pokemon content. My dog and I would both appreciate it. Now, as I said, this video won't focus on gimmick Pokemon, but I do want to bring up one that represents a larger problem with stat spreads as a whole. Shuckle is one of the earliest Pokemon that can be described as a gimmick, which if you're unfamiliar with the term, Nordist has a great video going in depth on what that is. Looking at Shuckle's stats, the extremes at play tell you one thing. It's meant to take damage, not dish it out. Or at least that's what it's supposed to do. But despite its astronomical defenses, it's held back significantly by its low HP. Of the 6 different base stats, HP tends to be the one people overlook, despite it being one of the most vital. Shuckle's low HP stat averages out its massive defenses, leaving it in a worse position than some Pokemon that have stats that are balanced. Again, I don't mean to harp on Shuckle, because you should never fuckle with Shuckle. But even giving it base 40 HP would make a big impact without making it broken. My whole point is this: high defenses mean next to nothing without HP. Dusknoir is a great example of this, as its very solid defenses are held back by its lackluster 45 HP. Take it from someone who used this in Draft League format, it's not nearly as defensive as you might think. On the flip side, Wobbuffet is an example of why the inverse works. Its defenses are pretty pitiful, but its high HP allows it to fill its intended role quite well, which is why it holds the title of the first non-legendary Pokemon to be banned to the Ubers tier. Well, mostly because of Shadow Tag. Of all Pokemon that run into this issue of low HP, I think the worst of them is Bastiodon. One of the Gen 4 fossil Pokemon, Bastiodon was designed with a very specific role: to wall. I mean, physically, yeah, it's literally a wall, but it's also meant to wall in battle. And with Rampardos being its counterpart, these two represent offense and defense, which has been done a number of times with a number of Pokemon. While Rampardos does decently in dishing out damage, Bastiodon can't quite tank hits to the same degree. Its defense and special defense stats are impressive, but base 60 HP, along with an unfavorable defensive type, leaves it a bit underwhelming as a wall. It's ironic because Rampardos is the one with high HP despite not really needing it. Bastiodon was never meant to be a game-breaking Pokemon, but they could have done something other than impair it from the get-go. Even boosting its HP stat by 15 points would help, although 20 might be the bare minimum to classify it as an actual wall.
But I already am an actual wall.
An attack buff would be nice too, as I would imagine getting smacked with that face would leave quite the mark. If Probopass can have base 75 special attack, I think Bastiodon should get at least 65 base attack. And we can even do this while keeping its pre-existing base stat total. Just take out a bit of special attack and special defense. I'm not saying these changes would make it amazing, but they would at least have an impact. But instead, we're stuck with this. I guess I can see why this thing went extinct in the first place. But going from a Pokemon with a clear role to a Pokemon with no role, here we have Glalie. Now this stat spread takes painfully average to a whole new level. As the literal definition of average, Glalie leaves most of us wondering, why? I totally understand the idea of balance, but why Glalie of all Pokemon? Its dex entries mention its body being covered in ice armor, how fire can't melt it, and how its body is made of rock. Which also does beg the question, why isn't Glalie part rock type? Regardless, all these dex entries point to Glalie being more defense-oriented. And you can make an argument for either physical defense or special defense. Maybe buff attack because of its mouth, special attack because it freezes its prey, just anything that sets it apart from being Ice-type Fione, Phione, Phone, I don't care. Again, I don't inherently dislike even stat spreads. The mythical Pokemon pull it off very well, and even Spinda makes a decent bit of sense with this stat spread. But Glalie is just weird. At the same time, this is a good chance to talk about Frostlass. Now let me preface this with, I love Frostlass. Amazing design, super cool typing, and it has a ton of utility in battle. But my question is, why does this thing have the exact same attack and special attack? Balancing its defenses, sure, but its attacking stats, it just feels wrong. I can't be the only one who thinks Frostlass should have higher special attack. Nothing crazy, just a 10-point difference would be enough. Either way, both evolutions of Snorunt, as well as Snorunt itself actually, are great examples of why being a jack of all trades isn't necessarily a good thing. Well, unless you're Mew, I guess. There's another Pokemon that has this same issue, and while it may have had success despite this, it doesn't change the fact that the stats just don't seem to match the Pokemon. And that's Kingdra. As the second Dragonline in the franchise, you'd think Kingdra would have made quite the splash in its debut. And while it definitely had its time in the sun, I mean time in the rain, to me its stats have always been a bit weird. For being powerful enough to summon whirlpools by yawning and cause tornadoes as it wakes, you'd think its stats would skew a bit more towards offense. I mean, how does a 6-foot-tall sea dragon have the same power as a candy apple? Oh, I'm sorry, a worm in a candy apple. Kingdra's stat spread is actually pretty decent for what it does, but I think we can all agree that a few things need to be tweaked. For starters, I don't think the defenses need to be 95. Maybe drop them by 10 and add it to special attack. For being this impressive sea dragon, this Pokemon needs at least one stat to clear 100. I don't want to take away from its mixed attacking capabilities, but just like with Frostlass, there's no way you're convincing me this thing hits as hard physically as it does specially. Honestly, I think a big reason for Kingdra's stat spread being the way it is because of its type, as it only had a single weakness at its debut, which was a type with only 4 offensive moves, one of which always deals 40 damage. Again, I think Kingdra's stat spread works, but it doesn't really seem to fit the Pokemon it's attached to. And especially due to power creep over the generations, I think a stat buff for this dragon is long overdue. But you know, at least Kingdra can blame power creep, because this next Pokemon should have been the power creep, yet it was extremely disappointing from the moment it was released. Veluza. Or should I say,
Veluza!
Anytime you come across this thing in Scarlet and Violet, it races over to you at top speed. Sometimes it can even seem impossible to dodge. But if that's the case, why is it sitting at base 70 speed? That makes this fish slower than Anorith, Cloth, Stunky, Sandaconda, and tied with Wo-Chien, the literal snail. Now a lot of you smarty pants may be quick to say it's because of Fillet Away, Veluza's signature move. Fillet Away cuts the user's HP in half in exchange for boosting its attack, special attack, and speed by 2 stages. Basically it's just like Shell Smash, but cutting your HP instead of lowering defenses. I can understand the concern of making Veluza too powerful given this move, but as of its current performance in competitive, I don't think anyone would be upset if we boosted its speed. In fact, I think Veluza could jump from base 70 to 105 and it would be just fine. I also feel like it could do with an attack buff, but between its ability Sharpness and now being able to run an Adamant nature consistently thanks to its speed buff, it wouldn't be entirely necessary. I know not every Pokemon needs to break the mold or even be that good in competitive, but I think we can all agree that we don't need any more mediocre fish Pokemon. We've got plenty already. But even as sad of an existence as Veluza is, there's one more Pokemon whose stats frustrate me to no end. Taking it from Gen 9 all the way back to Gen 1, here we have Electrode. Despite being a part of the original 151, this upside-down Pokeball has always felt like Dex filler. It's fast and goes boom, and that's about the full extent of this guy's depth. But seriously, take a look at this thing's stats. If you take away its ludicrously high HP, oh nope, that's not what it has. If you take away its ludicrously high speed, what's left? The answer, a Pokemon that spends most of their time in the PC. Obviously the rest of Electrode's stats leave a bit to be desired, but the saddest part is that it can't even use its high speed that effectively. It's in the perfect position to wreak some havoc by either hitting hard or launching off annoying status moves, but both its stats and moveset aren't well suited to this role. Meanwhile, a Pokemon like Excelgor learns a number of helpful utility moves, and can also go on the offensive. But I think the worst part about Electrode is that Game Freak had the chance to fix it multiple times, yet they did nothing. The first time was in Gen 2, when the special stat split into Special Attack and Special Defense. They could have made it slightly bulkier, or maybe a touch stronger, but instead they took the easy way out and kept them both at 80. Then in Gen 7, they finally decided to buff Electrode's stats, and their genius plan was to give it 10 more speed. Yeah, no, for sure, because that was the issue with Electrode. And the final nail in the coffin is Hisuian Electrode, which was a good opportunity to rearrange this underwhelming stat spread. But instead they said, "Nice," and kept it the exact same. If Electrode had been neglected over all these years, then I would understand its stat spread being disappointing. But it's so much worse that its stats have been altered, yet left in this subpar state. It's truly a wonder to me that I didn't include this thing in my worst Gen 1 video. If I were to fix Electrode's stats, there are two possible ways I would go about it. To make it more viable, I would buff its special attack from 80 to 95. Even then it's not amazing, as it's still weaker than Galvantula and Pom Pom or Ikorio, but you'd think something that stores tons of excess electricity would have more of an offensive presence than Glalie. But if we're taking everything about this Boomball into account, I think it makes a lot of sense to lower its defenses and buff its attack. I feel like any Pokemon that's constantly exploding would have pretty shit defenses. And if this thing really is known for going boom 24/7, maybe make its booms a little stronger? I don't know, I just need something to be different about this round boy, because these stats just aren't working. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that one of the game's laziest designs also sports one of the laziest and uninspired stat spreads in the entire franchise. While these Pokemon all have questionable stat spreads, there are still plenty more I could have talked about. What Pokemon do you think has disappointing stats? Let me know in the comments. I can think of a few Pokemon that were lucky enough to be left out of this video, so maybe we'll deal with them in a part 2. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to click all the YouTube buttons down below, and as thanks for making it to the end of the video, here's a picture of my dog. Talk to y'all soon.